So this is Goblet of Fire, and I mean, I didn't pick a part. I'm just gonna open it, and this could be a really cool thing, or it could be like really lame, and I just open up to something weird. But I mean, this is a pretty good book, so I think most parts are good parts. I'm hoping it'll be parts of the Yule Ball. Okay, ready? This is real, by the way. This is real. Okay, ready. Oh. Okay, so this is right at the beginning of the second task. Well, all our champions are ready for the second task, which will start on my whistle. They have precisely an hour to recover what has been taken from them. On the count of 3, then 1, 2, 3. The whistle echoed shrilly in the cold, still air. The stands erupted with cheers and applause. Without looking to see what the other champions were doing, Harry pulled off his shoes and socks, pulled the handful of gillyweed out of his pocket, stuffed it into his mouth, and waded out into the lake. The lake was so cold he felt the skin on his legs searing, as though this was fire, not icy water. His sodden robes weighed him down as he walked in deeper. Now the water was over his knees, and his rapidly numbing feet were slipping over silt and flat, slimy stones. He was chewing the gillyweed as hard and fast as he could. It felt unpleasantly slimy and rubbery, like octopus tentacles. Waist deep in the freezing water, he stopped, swallowed, and waited for something to happen. He could hear laughter in the crowd, and he knew he must look stupid, walking into the lake without showing any sign of magical power. The part of him that was still dry was covered in goose pimples. Half immersed in the icy water, a cruel breeze lifting his hair, Harry started to shiver violently. He avoided looking at the stands. The laughter was becoming louder, and there were catcalls jeering from the Slytherins. Then, quite suddenly, Harry felt as though an invisible pillow had been clapped over his mouth and nose. He tried to draw breath, but it made his head spin. His lungs were empty, and he suddenly felt a piercing pain on either side of his neck. Harry clapped his hands around his throat and felt 2 large slits just below his ears, flapping in the cold air. He had gills. Without pausing to think, he did the only thing that made sense. He flung himself forwards into the water. The first gulp of icy lake water felt like the breath of life. His head had stopped spinning. He took another great gulp of water and felt it pass smoothly through his gills, sending oxygen back to his brain. He stretched out his hands in front of him and stared at them. They looked green and ghostly into the water, and they had become webbed. He twisted around and looked at his bare feet. They had become elongated, and his toes were webbed too. It looked as though he had sprouted flippers. The water didn't feel icy anymore either. On the contrary, he felt pleasantly cool and very light. Harry struck out once more, marveling at how far and how fast his flipper-like feet propelled him through the water, and noticing how clearly he could see, and how he no longer needed to blink. He had soon swum so far in the lake that he could no longer see the bottom. He flipped over and dived into its depths. Silence pressed upon his ears as he soared over a strange, dark, foggy landscape. He could only see 10 feet around him, so that as he sped through the water, new scenes seemed to loom suddenly out of the oncoming darkness. Forests of rippling, tangled black weed, wide plains of mud littered with dull, glimmering stones. He swam deeper and deeper, out towards the middle of the lake, his eyes wide, staring through the eerily gray-lit water around him to the shadows beyond, where the water became opaque. Small fish flickered past him like silver darts. Once or twice he thought he saw something larger moving ahead of him, but when he got nearer he discovered it to be nothing but a large blackened log, or a dense clump of weed. There was no sign of any other champions, merpupil, Ron, nor, thankfully, the giant squid. Light green weed stretched ahead of him, as far as he could see, 2 feet deep, like a meadow of very overgrown grass. Harry was staring unblinkingly ahead of him, trying to discern shapes through the gloom, and then, without warning, something grabbed hold of his ankle. Harry twisted his body around and saw a Grindylow, a small horned water demon, poking out of the weeds. Its long fingers clutched tightly around Harry's leg, its pointed fangs bared. Harry stuck his webbed hand quickly inside his robes and fumbled for his wand. He's still wearing robes? Whatever. By the time, you'd think that he would wear swim trunks or something if he knew he was going in water. By the time he had grasped it, 2 more Grindylows had risen out of the weed, had seized handfuls of Harry's robes, and were attempting to drag him down. "Relatio!" Harry shouted, except no sound came out. A large bubble issued from his mouth, and his wand, instead of sending sparks at the Grindylow, pelted them with what seemed to be a jet of boiling water. For where it struck them, angry red patches appeared on their green skin. Harry pulled his ankle out of the Grindylow's grip and swam as fast as he could, occasionally sending more jets of hot water over his shoulder at random. Every now and then he felt one of the Grindylows snatch his foot again, and kicked out hard. Finally he felt his foot connect with the horned skull, and looking back he saw a dazed Grindylow floating away cross-eyed, while its fellows shook their fists at Harry and sank back into the weed.